Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Progenitor. This is the podcast where we usually just go over a director's entire filmography and we talk about themes, scenes, and just talk about what we like about the films. But this particular episode, we have a special guest. We have Ethan Warren with us, and how I found out about Ethan Warren is pretty much through a podcast called One Heat Minute with Blake Howard, and he was a guest on that. He was a guest on Increment Vice, right?
That was it, yeah.
Additionally, I looked you up, sir, and he's been an editor for Bright Wall Dark Room since 2018. And the reason why he's on this episode is he has a new book coming out. His first book, called The Cinema of Paul Thomas Anderson, American Apocrypha. How do you say that word?
You nailed it. That's it, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So, Ethan, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
No, this is awesome. So, we kind of talked a little bit before, we're going to record, and I have a couple of things I wanted to ask you before we get into the book. As you know, I've been going over the filmography of Ridley Scott, and I was wondering, do you have a top 5 of your own for Ridley Scott? And if so, what are they?
You know, I was thinking about this, and I don't know that I have like a top 5 I can really stand behind. Ridley Scott is not really like one of my guys. I have a top 1 that is super important to me. And then a couple others that I have seen and liked. Number 1 is The Martian, is a movie that is very special and important to me for like very specific personal reasons, which I'd be happy to tell you about.
Yes, please.
If you're so interested. Yeah. I mean, it's just, God, I mean, when did that movie come out? It must have been 2014, 15, something like that.
I got to look that up, but yeah.
Sure. Well, say it was around 2014 or 15. My grandmother had just died, and I was just like struggling to kind of cope and just sort of, sliding into just the sort of the blues. And I just had one of those moments where I was like, I need to get off the couch right this minute and just go see a movie, whatever it is, whatever is playing next at the nearest theater. That's what I'm going to do. And so I walked on down to the Somerville Theater in Somerville, Massachusetts. And it's this great theater, like great grand ballroom of a theater, one of the great theaters here in the Boston area. And I just sat down. I didn't have any particular expectations for this movie, and I just was so like locked into it immediately. And everyone in that theater, it was just one of those moments where like it feels like everyone is just on the exact same wavelength for the exact runtime of the movie. I felt like nobody even went to the bathroom for the entire time that we were watching this thing. Yeah. We were just one like organism, and it was like being in church, honestly. And like that movie, I think it is a really, truly excellent movie. Like it's weird and unusual, and it's a comedy that's also a thriller, and it's a thriller that's also a comedy.
Yeah.
It won the Golden Globe for Best Comedy that year, which was
that's
weird. Sort of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's a really special movie, but it is special to me for that very specific reason. It's one of those movies I just feel like gratitude for it existing, because it was there for me at a time that I needed just to be swept up in like big budget spectacle, sort of like not that taxing, feel good adventure filmmaking.
Right.
So thank you for that, Ridley Scott. Is that one that you're a fan of? Oh
yeah, it's definitely in my top 10. And I wanted to piggyback off and just say, it's such a wonderful movie in the sense that it's so hopeful. These characters never give up, and it definitely makes sense that this would be something that helped you out during that time, because it has a lot to say about like human ingenuity, human perseverance, the will. So I really appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, and it doesn't make a big honking deal out of like, the fact that it's a movie about the power of hope. It just sort of is a movie about incredible positivity leading to incredibly good things for a guy who's pretty screwed.
Yeah.
But it's not one of those that like hammers you over the head with the concept of, humans coming together and doing good things. At least not as I recall it, but God, it's been quite a while now. Time has passed.
Oh, I gotcha. I gotcha.
I got to see
Um,
it again.
yeah, you definitely should. I rewatched it recently, and same feel. And I don't know, the theater you watched it in. Did you watch it IMAX or was it just regular? Or
Just regular type, not IMAX. No.
okay, okay, sounds good. And I have to admit the score is amazing. Like Harry
Who
Gregson
did that one?
Williams.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's top of the line. But okay, cool. Any other ones that you kind of want to bring up before we get into PTA?
Well, he is a really interesting director. I mean, I
Yeah.
I love. I mean, Alien. Ever heard of it? Great movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I love how he has come back around to that series. I think Prometheus and Covenant are really interesting movies where
Yeah.
like he has returned to a series that had really grown beyond him, and he has said, I'm coming back and I'm taking the wheel and I am doing something so weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not just going to keep making Alien sequels like you're hoping for or used to. I am going to make these weird movies about, I don't know, God and the death of God and whatever it is that those movies are about.
Yeah. I
I
completely.
love them.
Yeah, I agree because it he starts asking questions about like creationism, right? Like, if you created me, who created you? And then he's got the androids that somehow like find out about jealousy, and envy and stuff like that. So it's really interesting.
Well, I
Yeah,
love those, and then I really was a huge fan of The Last Duel in a way that kind of surprised me. I
yeah.
didn't have huge expectations for that movie. I thought it was really terrific. Um, Ben Affleck is doing such special work in that movie, and nobody could be doing what he does quite the way he does it.
Completely agree. And the final fight scene is just amazing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, one of the great action sequences of the last few years. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, that is also in my top 10. I I think Prometheus is just like right outside of the top 10, but I really enjoyed it. And like when it first came out, I was able to watch it in IMAX 3D,
Mm.
and it's so immersive. I don't know if you saw it in IMAX 3D. It's just like so immersive, and you really get the gloom and doom of like the the photography and such. So yeah.
And then where do you stand on The Counselor? That's one that I feel like we just have to shout out for being like one of the weirder movies to exist.
So I recently rewatched that one, and The Counselor. Have you seen the unrated version?
Oh, I don't know which version I have. I doubt it's the unrated one.
Okay, because the unrated version adds like an extra hour, and so I
Ooh.
don't remember if the theatrical one was like this, but the first 7 minutes of the unrated version has like a sex scene with Penelope Cruz, and it blew my mind. Like, wow, why is this so long?
Yeah, really. How much of the extra hour is just devoted to that? I
I'm,
mean, a
I'm
movie
just glad
written.
there's no slow mo. Yeah.
Yeah, right. A movie written by one of the great writers and directed by one of the great directors. And you
Yeah.
just never would have expected that object is what comes out of particular
Yeah.
that particular combination. I just got distracted thinking, is that where Michael Fassbender came into his life? That was before Prometheus, right?
It was after. I
It is
think,
after. Okay.
yeah, I think it's right after. And the one other thing I want to bring up about The Counselor is uh, it really is one of those films that Tony Scott could have directed
Mm.
just as well. And I almost feel like it's definitely a tribute to Tony Scott because it came out like right after he passed. It was in production when he passed, and so I think this one is dedicated to Tony Scott. And it just has this weird energy, but I love it. Like I just and the fact that Cameron Diaz is a villain, that kind of blew my mind because I guess you don't see it coming, and then it just happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if there's any Ridley Scott movie I need to revisit, it is it is The Counselor out of any of his masterpieces.
Yeah.
I'm reading Blood Meridian right now, so Cormac McCarthy is like on the brain, and I I want to get back to it.
So have you read a lot of Cormac McCarthy before?
I have read a decent amount. Yeah, I mean he's written a whole lot of books, but I've read like four or five.
I gotcha, I gotcha. Because I haven't really read Cormac McCarthy, but he translates well on screen with No Country for Old Men, and I really think that The Counselor had a really interesting screenplay in terms of like a drug deal gone bad. You know what I mean?
Short. Also, the plot of No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I'm really interested. And the fact is, I don't know if you know this, but Ridley Scott was actually attached to direct Blood Meridian for a long time.
Oh, that's right. He was. Yeah, man. He
Yeah.
should get back to it. Do it, Ridley. You're still busy.
Yeah, just get on it because you want to make a movie every year. So, but
It's not too late.
anyways, yeah, I know, right? But yeah, why don't we get into your book really quick and into your love and background of Paul Thomas Anderson? Like, what made you want to write this book in the first place?
Well, it was motivated by a love and fascination with Paul Thomas Anderson, a love that has become a little complicated over the course of writing the book. I think
Why?
when you really have to dig in on these movies for as the number of years that I did,
Hmm.
um, the sort of the complexities of them emerge. So, going into this thing, all I knew was the 8 movies at that time. Now we have 9. But the 8 that existed at the time that I was starting to write, and I
Right.
do cover all 9 in the book. I had to do a really quick revision last fall after Licorice Pizza came out. I just What led me to the book was I am fascinated by his work in that the movies are always immediately appealing to me, but always take a lot of sort of revisits to kind of get under the surface of. So The
Hmm.
Master, a movie that maybe I bounced off a little bit on the first watch, but very quickly became, my go-to answer for favorite movie.
Wow.
Every time I would watch that movie, I would feel like I was getting a little bit closer to kind of cracking how it worked and why.
Hmm.
But it just was always just beyond my grasp. And I would think, next time I'm going to get it. I'm going to wrap my hands around that brass ring.
Right.
Punch Drunk Love, the first movie of his that I saw, I left that movie. I was like 16, and I walked out of the theater just enraged because I
Why?
was just like, well, what is this thing? It's supposed to be an Adam Sandler movie, but
Uh-huh.
it's so like anxious and weird and violent. And why does this movie seem to hate me? Was my question. And so it's his movies always leave me with a sense of like, why does that work the way it works? How
Hmm.
does that work? Even There Will Be Blood, a movie that really opened up for me immediately. There was still that feeling of like, wait, is this a drama? It's so funny, but
Yeah.
it's not a comedy.
Yeah.
So and then Boogie Nights and Magnolia, movies that maybe reveal themselves a little bit more easily right off the top,
Hmm.
but still have so much going on. And those are the ones that maybe my relationship with got a little more complicated, which we can talk about if you'd like to. It's
Oh yeah.
sort of a bummer.
I do. I would. Okay, because my next question is like, what is your top five? But let's get into that in a little bit. But yeah,
Well, tell me,
sorry.
what is your relationship with him?
You know what? Like that was my next question to you. How did you find out about Ridley? Not Ridley Scott, but Paul Thomas Anderson. Because like for me, I actually learned about him through Roger Ebert. And what I used to do is I used to go on Roger Ebert's website, and he has this special section that he used to have called Great Movies.
Such an amazing resource, that whole series. Yeah.
Yes, I love that website so much. And I used to read up a lot of the reviews on that particular page, and I caught up with Magnolia, and I was like, Magnolia, I wonder what this is. It has Tom Cruise. I'll check it out. And yeah, I think that was the first Paul Thomas Anderson film I watched, and I actually like really fell in love with it. And then from there, I saw There Will Be Blood in theaters. I'm originally from Texas. We have this indie theater called the Angelica, which was awesome. It had those leather seats, stadium seating, and everything, like really plush. And then every single one of the movies that I saw of his, it always has like this moment where you're like, like I have so many emotions going on right now, and I don't really understand how this movie can do so much like at one moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
The fact that you brought up Punch Drunk Love, the first time I saw that was probably I downloaded it in college or something, and I was like, "What? This is so weird." Number one, like you said, it's an Adam Sandler movie, but it's crazy. And number two, it's not like epic scope like Boogie Nights or Magnolia. It's kind of like going back to the Hard Eight feel. So it kind of threw me aback a little bit. But after a couple of rewatches, I've really learned to love it. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Every single one of his movies definitely take a rewatch. Like they each have rewatchability to them. But yeah,
And we haven't even mentioned Inherent Vice, the movie that maybe more than any other in existence takes a bunch of watches to kind of open up for you.
I remember. Okay, so this is a really fun movie because I took my friend to watch it, and my friend is not a cinephile or anything. He's just like, if you invite him to a movie, he'll go. And after the movie, he was like, "Dude, that was the weirdest shit I've ever seen in my life."
Mm-hmm.
And
Accurate.
yeah, and the scenes I'm talking about, like when he goes to um what is that, the massage parlor, or
Chick Planet. Yep.
yeah, or the random scenes when they're looking for the dentist and Martin Short is a coked up dentist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the funny one is when he looks at the picture of the baby. You never see the picture of the baby.
Oh God, no! And thank God you don't see the picture.
Yeah, because like the parents are like drug addicts or whatever, so you're guessing that something happened. And Joaquin Phoenix is such a genius. You know what I mean?
He is. Oh my God! And coming right off The Master, the movie where he is playing the exact opposite character. It's God,
Yeah.
amazing.
And the thing about that is, I think The Master is the one movie I'm really frightened to revisit, and I don't know why. I think you're right. Like, it's just so dense. You know what I mean?
It is, but then at the end of the day, it's a movie that you just kind of have to feel. You kind of just have to
Mm,
surrender to it and just sort of ride the wave a little bit. Because that's
yeah.
that's what I've come to realize. Is it's a movie that operates the way the character operates. He is
Mm.
woozy. He is disoriented, and he's falling in and out of consciousness. And so you can let go of trying to follow any kind of plot because there isn't really a plot. There's just a guy drifting along, and there's a relationship.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's as good a plot description as any. But let me ask you another question then. Going back to Paul Thomas Anderson, like he has a repertoire of actors. Who do you think is your favorite collab with him?
Boy, I mean, it's hard to say anybody but Daniel Day-Lewis. I just think they they have brought out such amazing things in each other because
Hmm.
it's a true collaboration.
Yeah.
It's and working with Day-Lewis on There Will Be Blood is the first time that he allowed for he wasn't a co-writer, but they worked together to establish that character, and that movie is the character. And
Mm,
so it is his first really strong collaboration in that way. And then
hmm.
they did the same thing with Phantom Thread. It was something that they built together, and that movie would not exist in the form it exists without Day Lewis's input. So I guess that's my answer. I love Phoenix because both Phoenix and Day-Lewis, what they did is they've done 2 movies with him each, and in
Hmm.
each case, they have done a character and then they have done the exact opposite character. So Day-Lewis does Daniel Plainview, who is this
Oh,
brutal sort of thuggish man who
right.
can barely express himself. And then
Yeah.
he plays this very sort of effete, refined man who also struggles to express himself.
Yes.
That is, struggling to express himself is a through line in Anderson's work. I think characters who, especially in the post Punch Drunk Love movies, characters who really are locked up in their own heads. But the same thing with Joaquin Phoenix, where he plays Freddie Quell, who is this coiled alcoholic, and then he plays Doc Sportello, who is this very loose and goofy stoner. And it's
Yeah.
you don't often see 2 such perfect case studies in one director bringing out the exact opposite things in 2 actors like that, and I think that's really exciting. But
Wow.
then, I mean, to go back, there's like, John C. Reilly, like
Hmm.
they got to get back together again because they brought out such beautiful things in each other.
Hmm. Hmm.
Julianne Moore, they did 2 great movies together. Like,
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
he tends to work really intensely with somebody and then not work with them anymore, which is
'Cause-
too bad.
yeah, maybe it's too intimate, or who knows?
Yeah, yeah. Or I mean,
Because
there's also just there's so many actors out there for him to play with. I want to see him work with so many people. So
who's one that you really want to see?
Colin Farrell, I want to see
Oh,
him hooked up with Colin Farrell so bad.
oh my God, Colin Farrell is so great. Have you seen Banshees?
I have. I mean, the
Oh,
year that he has just had with the 4 movies that he was in, and we know
that's right.
PTA was a big fan of 13 Lives, so he's got Colin Farrell on the brain. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens.
That would be awesome. Um, as for me, I really think in terms of collaborations, I'm gonna piggyback off of you in saying, of course, Daniel Day Lewis, but Philip Seymour Hoffman really comes to
Oh
mind.
God, what to quote Philip Seymour Hoffman in Boogie Nights, I'm a fucking idiot. Why didn't I think of that one immediately?
And not just that. Okay, so for Boogie Nights, he was kind of like he's kind of in the background, like one of those production assistant types kind of
Hmm.
guy, right?
He's the
Right.
boom mic operator, yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right. But he wants to be in the movies, right?
Um, he's in love with Dirk. It's
Yeah.
Maurice is the guy who wants to be in the movies.
Oh, okay, okay.
Maurice, played by Luis Guzman, yeah.
Oh, I gotcha. I gotcha. But like going from the boom mic guy to Magnolia as the nurse, that when he plays the nurse in that movie, your heart breaks for him. You know what I mean? And
It's unbelievable what he does in
yeah,
that part, yeah.
and he was in Hard Eight too. He was one of those crazy gamblers.
Yep, yep. He's the craps player. I think they're playing craps. Yeah,
Yeah,
who's just belligerent, and I mean he's only got the one scene, and it's a scene that like barely makes any sense.
yeah.
It's a scene that feels so important, but it doesn't tell you why it's important, and you have to do a little interpretive work just to make it sort of fit.
Then do you know why? Because I don't. It's been a while.
I mean, I have my interpretation, which is just that it's about the sort of older guy going up against Sydney, the main character of that
Hmm.
movie, is sort of a relic of one generation of masculinity,
Right.
and the sort of the buttoned up suit wearing, hard ass, the term that keeps being used about him in that movie. And then
Hmm.
he comes up against this younger generation, which is embodied by John C. Reilly, who he is trying to mold in his own image. And
Right.
then Riley's got his other influence in Samuel L. Jackson's character, Jimmy. And by having just this one-on-one head-to-head moment with the most obnoxious young man possible, and
Yeah.
you see what that you see what it brings out in him, which is very little, except that he makes a really dumb bet. In that scene, he is goaded into making a hard 8 bet, which is a bet with incredibly low odds. You should not make that bet. But
Right.
he allows himself to be shaken by Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, and something about you have to kind of think, why is he allowing himself to be backed into this bad bet? What is he trying to prove to this guy?
Hmm.
And what is the answer? I don't really know, except that he wants to prove that he has the balls that this guy is claiming he doesn't have. And I mean, I guess it's just the fact that his confidence is shaken. He projects confidence at all times,
Right.
but he allows his confidence to be shaken here, and he will again later.
I gotcha. That,
I'm not sure I got me. It's a tough scene to crack, and that's my best sort of, impromptu run at it.
that I would piggyback, but like Hard Eight is one of those movies that I haven't seen in a while. But I remember just like really loving the vibe. Like a lot of times when I watch Paul Thomas Anderson, he just has this vibe to him, like the
Mm-hmm.
music's
Yeah.
on point, the soundtracks and the cinematography. It's just like, for example, Phantom Thread, um, which is my second. I made a top five for myself for PTA, but and Phantom Thread is my second favorite, and it's just like you kind of mentioned it before, but it's such a hypnotic thriller, dark comedy about the almost the impossibilities of love, um,
No,
without
totally.
having like you have to love is painful. I feel like is a big theme, especially with Punch Drunk Love. Like nothing is easy about love, and sometimes you really have to sacrifice. In the case of Phantom Thread, pretty much sacrifice your life for your love, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
And
that's a movie about how it sucks to be in love with Paul Thomas Anderson, it seems to me. It's a movie about how if you are an obsessive artist, you are going to be very hard to be lovable, and
yeah,
sometimes you may have to go to drastic lengths to make yourself lovable.
yeah, that makes complete sense. I remember listening to an interview about him too, and the fact that like he always has a TV on, or he's always watching like TCM or some
Yep.
movie, and I was just like, wow, living with that for me. I love film. I would probably be happy, but not everyone wants to watch a movie like every single day. You know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, but to have Turner Classic Movies as your ambient background noise, I mean, you could do a lot worse.
Oh, 100%. Because like when I used to live alone, and I would just come back from work, that's the first thing I would turn on, especially if it was something, that I really, really wanted to see. But yeah.
I
Okay.
think we have mentioned every movie except Licorice Pizza at this point.
Well.
So, yes.
Oh, and that's another good point because there's a through line with Philip Seymour Hoffman to
Oh, yeah.
what's his son's name? Cam? Is it
Cooper
Cooper?
Hoffman.
Cooper Hoffman, yeah. And dude, Cooper Hoffman for his first movie is absolutely incredible, you know?
Yeah, he is a revelation. He and Alana Haim are both just extraordinary in that movie. Yeah.
Have, have you seen the Haim music videos that he directed?
I've seen him all many, many times. I've got a chapter on his music videos in the book. So yeah, I'm well versed in those.
That sounds awesome. So like in terms of the music videos, like which one would be your favorite? Because he did one for one of the Radiohead guys, and
Hmm.
I did not see the documentary Junon. But yeah, what do you think? Like which one stands out to you the most?
Well, Junun is tremendous for one thing. Just because you get to see his mind working in real time, because it's just him with a camcorder. He's using like a vacationer style camcorder,
Oh wow.
and it's just him and a camera moving around these spaces while people are doing performances. And so you see him finding his angle and then going, oh, maybe this is a little better, and then his interest goes over here, and now he wants to look at some birds. And you never get to see a great director just thinking in real time like that. But
I,
in terms of, sorry,
yeah, no, go for it.
in terms of the Haim videos, my favorite of those is definitely "A Little of Your Love," which is just like it starts with Danielle Haim just walking down the street, and then she goes into a dive bar, and then everybody in the dive bar just starts line dancing, or maybe they're already line dancing when she gets in there, and she just joins in, and
Yeah.
it's like it reminds me a lot of the disco interlude in Boogie Nights, where
Oh.
it's just the joy of movement and music, and there's nothing else to it. It's just a great song
Mhm.
and ecstatic people.
The one I remember seeing is it's kind of like the one take when they're actually recording the song, and
Yes, yeah,
just
yeah,
the camera just what is that term? It's just like roving around, like just in
sure,
and out. It's so awesome. Like just how fluid it is. It's like a freaking paintbrush, really.
yeah.
And the song is really cool too. Like it's very very memorable. Um, but yeah, like that. I think that's one of the major thing that catches my eye when I see a director who's constantly moving, has that energy with the camera. Like it goes back to my love for Martin Scorsese, and I think that's one of the things that Paul Thomas Anderson brings in as well. And of course, there's the influence of Robert Altman, and he's got the influences of Jonathan Demme. But yeah, like what what do you think captures you about his aesthetic?
Boy, I mean, it's. I see a lot of tensions in his style, particularly when it comes to his influences. And one of the tensions that I'm always really interested in is that he is equally influenced by Altman and Kubrick.
Mm.
And those are two guys who are really, really different.
What
Um,
what about Kubrick or
well,
Kubrick?
he uh, in what way?
What what uh what stylistic thing does Kubrick influence in terms of PTA?
Well, it's the sort of the grand stately compositions. The sort of you see it mostly
Mm.
in I think There Will Be Blood and some in The Master. The
Mhm.
sort of very composed frames and
Mhm.
the stately grandeur of some of those shots.
Mhm.
But then at the same time, you've got the Altman influence, which is as shaggy as possible. I mean, I
Yeah.
am not the only person who has seen a lot of 2001 influence in a lot of Anderson's movies. Um, a lot of people have seen There Will Be Blood as, you know, more or less a remake of 2001. Maybe not that directly, but um,
Really?
I mean, it's these are two to say remake is maybe a little intentionally goofy.
Oh yeah.
Um, but it's about the evolution of this character. You find him at the beginning in the desert in
Mhm.
this hole. He is in his most primal form. It's a wordless opening. And
Oh.
then there is a sort of evolutionary leap, and we jump into the future.
Mhm.
And there are a number of those jumps in the movie. And Kubrick was a guy who really loved to have his movies make those sort of jumps. They were guided by dot 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 more than they were by and then this and then this and then this.
Right.
And that is how There Will Be Blood is constructed, with a lot of dot 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 jumps, and how The Master is basically all made up of those dot 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 jumps.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that, I mean, more than anything, that is what I see as the real Kubrick influence is the way that, God, I'm having to like I haven't read my own book in a while, but some of my own concepts are coming back to me now. Yeah, that sort of ellipsis jump. And The Shining is built that way. Full Metal Jacket is built that way. But then on the other
I
hand, you have the Altman influence. Sorry?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, in terms of The Shining, I guess I I feel like there's that tension and that silence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially in regards to There Will Be Blood, because there's so much silence in that film, and tense. moments, and it's all building up to a man's like insanity, you know?
Right. A ton of The Shining in There Will Be Blood.
Yeah, I can totally see that now.
Yeah, and people have seen the ending in the bowling alley as feeling evocative of the Overlook, and not to mention he's beating a guy's head
Yeah.
in basically a shot for shot of the ape beating the other
Yeah.
ape in 2001. If I mean, and he pretends these things are unintentional, but he is such a goofball liar. He Oh yeah, I did not intend for the 2001 influence on the Daniel Plainview beating. Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
But at the same time, you know, like being such a film, you know, student of film, you know, it's just in your blood, I guess. You
That's what he
can't help.
says. Yeah, that's his claim.
Oh, I get where I see where you're going with that.
You know the
Um,
one that has a ton of 2001 references though, and this is my little pet theory. Is Punch Drunk Love is full of references to 2001 and Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
so all of this is pretty much in your book, then, correct?
Yeah, that one I couldn't really make the idea that Punch Drunk Love has references to sci-fi movies. I got a little bit of that in there, but that would have needed its own book just to open all that up. Trust me, it's in there. There's so much. These movies are so deep and so dense.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually looking at the book, like the table of contents, and you have a section of it on religion
Hmm.
that I found was very interesting because you know when you talk about Magnolia, you know they definitely have some. I believe there's a couple of quotes from the Bible in that one,
Oh
and then
yeah.
the Master has that idea of Scientology and there will be blood. What a you know, a critique on organized religion. So it's really interesting. I since I haven't been able to read the book, I kind of wanted to ask you about that. Like, what do you think is his interest in that in that idea of religion?
Well, he is interested in the extent to which religion can be useful on a personal one-to-one basis, I think.
Hmm.
I think he is interested in the idea of having faith in another person,
Hmm.
um, and where that is sort of a good or a bad thing. I mean, he's made essentially 3 movies about, more or less cult leaders. The
Yeah.
Master, obviously, number one. That's an obvious one.
Yeah.
But Eli Sunday is
Yes.
is closer to a cult leader than a preacher.
Yeah.
And then Tom Cruise's character Frank T.J. Mackey in Magnolia, essentially a cult leader.
Oh,
And
I
so,
yeah, I never even thought of that. That's a
yeah,
good
and
point.
the cult of men's rights, basically.
Yeah.
And so if you look at that, it's this idea that believing too much in one person is probably a bad thing.
Mm.
But he also sees religion as useful in possibly creating change for an individual person if they meet it where they can best meet it. So Freddie actually does go through positive personal change through his associations with the cause.
Mhm.
And Daniel, through his baptism, is what leads him to reunite with his estranged child.
Yeah.
It's a very cynical. There Will Be Blood is a very cynical scene where Daniel is being baptized basically against his will. But that's the moment where he has his catharsis and his "I've abandoned my child, I've abandoned my boy," and then dot dot dot. The next thing we see is him bringing the kid back into his life.
Yeah. What
So there's
Yeah,
sorry.
keep going.
Well, it's there's the organized religion factor, but there's also just this interest in faith, and you can see, I think, even just faith in the universe's randomness and interconnectedness.
Yeah.
Magnolia is a movie about that's a movie about religion in a big way because Jim
Right.
Curring, the John C. Reilly character, is a practicing Catholic.
And at the same time there's a lot of coincidence in that film too, right? With the
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's what the beginning introduction to the film is about, right? About the coincidental, or is it coincidence or
It's a movie that wants to be about coincidence, but there's not that much that's that coincidental about those opening sequences.
yeah,
And I mean, well, I guess those are pretty profoundly coincidental, but there's not that much coincidence in the rest of the movie.
right.
He really throws that down with those opening sequences. Of course, those are all three of those little stories in the beginning are about outrageous coincidence. I misspoke, but later, what comes later in the movie is there's not that much coincidence or interconnectedness in that movie. The characters don't cross paths all that much.
Right.
So he makes that big statement and then he doesn't really follow through with it, which is what happens when I think you write a movie while you have cocaine just going up your nose as at the rate that you are breathing, is maybe you don't quite make all the connections you thought you were making.
Wow. Yeah. And well, that there is a lot of truth to that because there's a lot of stories coming out about that as well. And hey, like let's not fault them. Even the greats like Martin Scorsese had that too. So
Hey, man, a lot of great movies were powered by cocaine. And no value judgment one way or the other on that.
100%. Yeah. Why don't we, if you don't mind, do you have a personal top 5?
It is basically impossible for me because it would change day to day. So we can just do what it would be maybe today.
Yeah, let's do that.
Basically, they're all tied for first except for Heart 8, which is then in last position. I just it surprises me anytime anybody does not have Heart 8 last. And more power to you. It makes for a much more interesting top list if you don't have it last, but it surprises me.
Right. I would actually have to agree. And let's get into the one movie that we haven't really talked about, Licorice Pizza. Actually, Licorice Pizza and Inherent Vice, cuz I'm Asian American and I'm not going to go into that whole like, oh, he did this and this that was kind of racist. But I was kind of I find it really interesting that in both Inherent Vice and in Licorice Pizza, he does have like these two really wildly funny like Japanese characters in it. Inherent Vice, it has the Japanese restaurant with the pancakes, right?
Yep, yep.
And then in Licorice Pizza, it has the Japanese and the husband, right? Where they don't
Yeah, yeah.
understand each other. And I mean, I understand like how people could be frustrated with that, but at the same
I
time,
will say, not to interrupt you, I fucking hate that stuff. That is enough. That in
oh,
Licorice Pizza, that is enough to risk tanking the movie for me. I think it is pretty outrageous, but
oh,
I don't want to
so
speak over you.
so did it affect so it affected your viewing then, right?
It affects my viewing every time. It affects me when I think about the movie. I am shocked that he was that tonally misjudged, that he couldn't, and that he has refused in interviews to even understand why people could find it upsetting. Like watching that, sitting there the first time in the same theater that I saw The Martian in. Now that I think about it, in the main screening room at the Somerville Theater,
Yeah.
I felt like I had the wind knocked out of me in
Hmm.
those scenes. It just it in this day and age, to not understand why using a voice like that would bother and upset people really just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I was watching it, it didn't really impact me because I was already immersed in it. It definitely took me out for a couple minutes, right? And then my wife asked me about it late. I asked my wife about it later, and she was like, "Yeah, that was really weird. Why would they get married and not understand each other?" So yeah, it's a good it is a complaint to have, but yeah, overall though, Licorice Pizza in its idea of like young love, right? And just that time period and the ambition. I feel like a lot of these films are about ambition, broken families, trying to find surrogate relationships, stuff like that. That's definitely something that I find is in a lot of his films, right? Like Hard
Totally, yeah.
Eight. I don't know about Licorice Pizza. Is there a I guess you don't ever see the father, right? His father.
The dad is completely out of the picture. It is the only movie that he has made where the mom is a present figure. That there is a loving and nurturing mom, but she is fairly absent in the movie. She travels a lot for work, and so Gary is
Yeah.
basically left raising his little brother. It's implied.
So is it I didn't do too much background, but is it inherently like close to his childhood? Because, if you read about Paul Thomas Anderson, like his dad was in TV pretty much, right?
He was, and his parents were divorced, and
Mm,
he had a pretty rough relationship with his mom.
mm,
For all that, I say had, she is still alive, and it seems that they have actually mended things a little bit.
mm.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, divorce is a clear element of his upbringing, and he had a very strong and loving relationship with his dad. And as a young person, yeah, he and his mom, it has he has never outright said it, but he basically has said that the mother in Boogie Nights, the one who is screaming at her son that he'll never amount to anything because he's too fucking stupid. Sorry
Yeah,
for cursing. Um,
it's okay.
he has basically said that that is inspired by his own relationship with his mom, which I can't
Wow.
imagine she felt good about seeing on screen.
Yeah, that definitely is tough. Um, yeah, but I don't want to keep you too long, but before
I,
we end this episode, I want to ask you some final questions. What is your next big project?
my next big project is the book that I'm currently writing about Bob Dylan as a cinematic figure,
Oh.
which is quite a as I realize as I am getting into the first chapter, I have bitten off quite a subject for myself. It's one
so
of the
so
most written about people ever to exist.
so in terms of Bob Dylan, so you're talking about his performances in films or also his music in films or both?
I haven't found a way to get into his music in films because there's just so much. I mean, it's wall to wall.
Yeah.
Movies are full of Bob Dylan music. I tried to find a way to make a chapter out of that, but it's impossible. So no,
Hmm.
it's him on screen, either as himself or as people playing him. So I talk about the great D.A. Pennebaker documentary "Don't Look Back," and I talk
Mhm.
about Todd Haynes' "I'm Not There." Dylan directed a couple of movies, neither of which is in wide circulation, but both of which can be found, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, very easily. Um, and he has acted in some movies. He acted in Sam Peckinpah's Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. He
Yeah.
acted in Hearts of Fire, the movie that essentially killed Richard Marquand, the director of Return of the Jedi. That's not really a joke. People say that the bad experience on that movie did hasten poor Richard Marquand's death. I don't know whether
Oh,
that's true
wow.
or not. I suppose I'll get into it. Um, yeah, I mean he has been in the movies since the 60s, since 1965 when he first walked onto movie screens, and Don't Look Back, he's been pretty consistently a presence on screen. We're at the, I think, the 20-year anniversary of the Sundance premiere of his movie Masked and Anonymous, which is a fascinating little curio.
Oh, he's in that, or he directed that, or
He co-wrote and stars in, yeah, the movie Masked and Anonymous, which
oh.
was directed by Larry Charles, who directed Borat, one of, up there with The Counselor, one of the weirder movies to exist.
And then on top of that, like Scorsese just made a documentary, or well, not a mockumentary, but a
It's
film
not
about,
it's not quite a documentary. It's not quite a mockumentary. It's something really
right?
special. I love that movie. Yeah,
What?
Rolling Thunder Review.
Yeah, Rolling Thunder Review. That's what it was, and it's free on Netflix. Well, I guess Netflix is not free, so but yeah.
It's free to Netflix subscribers. Yes.
Yes.
And it's on the Criterion Collection.
Oh.
that is such a special movie because that movie exists basically to try and do something with the movie that he directed in the 70s. In the 70s, Dylan directed this movie called Ronaldo and Clara, which is a 4-hour mess.
Oh my god.
It's just abstraction. It has no plot, it has no characters. It's just stuff that he was making up as he went along during the Rolling Thunder review tour.
Uh-huh.
And so it's
So
all this great footage. Sorry.
oh, no, no, no. I was just gonna add, like, so it was made, out of cocaine as well.
It sure was. Oh my god, yes. Oh my god, that tour. Yeah, cocaine was a huge element of that tour. Um,
Yeah.
but so it's this gold mine of footage that he just didn't know how to do anything good with. And
Mhm.
so Scorsese came along and he said, "Let's make a documentary." At least this is how it seems to me that it happened was let's Scorsese and Dylan put their heads together to make a documentary that would honor the spirit of this weird venture of his, this 4-hour
Oh,
abstraction, and you
I
could
see.
weave in elements of it, but you can't tell the story of that tour straight. It's just not interesting. What you've got to do is I mean, he was into cubist painting at that time, and so that's what his movie was made of. And so Scorsese, I think, is drafting off some of that. It's
Uh-huh.
a cubist, weird, fake documentary where you're looking at all the different angles of the same thing, and some of it's true and some of it's not. I don't know. I think it's special. And it's the second of Scorsese's Dylan documentaries. The other one, No Direction Home, similarly, I mean, more straightforward, but similarly essential. Yeah, Bob Dylan on film. There's a lot there.
Wow, that so how long does it normally take to write, like, these books? For example, the PTA book that you have coming out, American Apocrypha.
Yeah, boy, um, I got started on that in 2020 and it's coming out in 2023.
Okay, okay.
So, that's not too bad, all things considered.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I finished it. I handed it in a year ago now. So it basically took 2 years from idea to completion and then another year for it actually to come out. So based on that, we can maybe hope to see this Bob Dylan book in 2025 or so.
Uh, Awesome. I can't wait. And hopefully we can do this again.
Hey, I'm here. I'm yours.
But yeah, why don't real quick before we end the episode, why don't you just give a plug and plug your book really quick and yeah.
Yeah, so as you say, The Cinema of Paul Thomas. Why can I never get the title of my own book right?
Oh shoot, did
This
I miss the cinema
No,
of
I always mess it up. I always just want to plow in and say Paul Thomas Anderson. No. It is called The Cinema of Paul Thomas Anderson, American Apocrypha. It is a part of the Director's Cuts series from Wallflower Books, which
Mhm.
is a element of Columbia University Press, and it will be out in April of this year. April 25th, I believe, is the official publication date. It is available for pre-order wherever you get your books, but if you are kind enough to pre-order it through the Columbia University Press website, that is always the most helpful thing to do, I think, to a publisher, for a publisher. And yeah, I also am going to be doing a podcast with Blake Howard of the One Heat Minute Network called Pod Thomas Anderson in
Ooh,
support of the book, where we are going to be doing some excerpts from the book plus some interviews with some really interesting people. So that'll be out this spring around the same time.
I can't wait. And actually I just recently listened to the Fablemans episode on the One Heat Minute production.
Yes,
So
I,
that was
I
really
just,
fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's an audio essay that I worked on with Blake that is available on One Heat Minutes feed right now. Yeah.
And anywhere where else can they find you, Ethan?
I am around and about. As you mentioned, for 4 years, I was an editor for the online film journal Bright Wall Dark Room. Still a place that is incredibly near and dear to my heart, though I have amicably parted ways with them as an editor. But
I'm
I will
so
be
sorry.
writing. Oh God, no, it's very only as of a couple of months ago, but I'll be writing for them again before too long. They are all of my very best friends over there,
Okay.
and oh God, yeah, no, it's fine. And I write. I've got stuff at Polygon every so often, and LitHub, and I have a piece coming out in the Los Angeles Review of Books in about a week or so. So I'm out there, and I'm on Twitter at Ethan_Warren_, which is the best way to keep up with what I am doing.
And that's how I found about this podcast.
Yes.
That, but yeah, Ethan, I just want to thank you for taking time off your busy schedule to talk with me a little bit about Ridley Scott and a lot about Paul Thomas Anderson. And want to wish you good luck on your book tour and hope that thing sells out.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
No, it was a great pleasure. And for the rest of you guys, actually, Ethan, I want
Yes.
to ask you a question. So,
Okay.
so I just did Ridley Scott, like his entire filmography. Who do you think is a visual stylist that would be on par that has a filmography that is not so daunting?
Oh boy. So who should you cover that would not be too daunting a filmography? I mean, have you done Kubrick? That is
Ooh.
those movies are daunting, but there's not that many of them.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah. I have not done Kubrick. I need to put him on the list, but I do think that he is a little too daunting as of now. He might be I might have to do like a master's.
Sure. I
Yeah.
mean, Wes Anderson, my mind goes to.
Oh, okay. I love that. Okay. That would be great.
Again, like huge visual stylist, but there's not too many of them. Or we're gonna have two more of them as of this year.
Oh, you mean his films?
Yeah, he's got two movies coming out this year because one was held up by the pandemic, and
Mm.
then the other one is just coming out right on its heels. So yeah,
All right. Well, thank you for the suggestions. I definitely would want to do Wes Anderson, but I definitely want to do Paul Thomas Anderson because
do it.
I mean, after I saw Magnolia, he yeah, he jumped to the top of the list. Like, oh man, are there any other filmmakers that are like when you hear their name, like they're directing a new film that you have to go see in the theater?
Boy, that's. I mean, I go see everything in the theater, so
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
I'm not sure how to prioritize it like that. I mean, I'm drawing a complete blank, which is super embarrassing. I have lots of favorite directors, I swear.
No, it's completely understandable. I randomly thought of that just now, so it's fine. I think my main question is if you were to write another book on a director.
Ari Aster, and Robert Eggers. Those are my two guys right now. That comes to mind.
All right. Did you see Northman?
I did see Northman, and my letterboxed review was how many movies before I get to write a book about this guy. I think he is fascinating.
Yeah. I definitely like both of them, and I normally do not like horror, but I thought The Witch was an amazing film, and I definitely liked Hereditary, and what was the second one?
Midsommar,
Oh, dude, that movie was excellent. Okay.
a midso masterpiece, in my opinion.
Yes, exactly. But the time is drawing near, and I gotta end this conversation.
I gotta
Uh,
go to bed, so I get it.
but Ethan, thank you again for joining us, and yeah, good
Thank
luck
you.
on all of your projects.
I appreciate it. Good luck with all of your projects.
Thank you, sir. And listeners, we'll talk to you all soon. Announcing the next director. I wonder who that will be. I'm not sure yet. But thank you, Ethan, for the suggestions. All right.
You got it.
Bye, guys.